Do you remember when and where you were born?
Yes. January 2nd, 1926.
Okay. Were you born in Michigan?
Highland Park, Michigan.
Okay. And why were your parents living there?
Because that's where my dad came from, Italy. It was a place that they could get work.
Was he working for Henry Ford at the time?
Chrysler.
For Chrysler.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you were the youngest of four?
I'm the youngest. My sister Ange and I were born in the United States.
Okay.
Clyde and Vic were born in Italy.
And there's a big age difference between you guys, right?
Very much so, yeah.
And how much older is Vic than you?
Oh boy, Vic has got to be...
15, 16 years?
Oh, more than that. Yeah, he's got to be like 20 years older than me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he and Clyde were born in?
In Italy, both of them born in Italy. There's a real close, there's about a year and a half difference between Clyde and Vic.
And do you know where in Italy were they born?
In Reggio Emilia.
Okay, up in the north.
Yeah.
And is that where your parents met?
Yes.
And
both from there.
And when your family moved, when you were born in the States, that wasn't the first time that your father had moved to America.
No, my father was in the Italian army. He was drafted in the army. He hated Mussolini with a passion.
Because he was a fascist.
Fascist. He hated fascist. Anybody started talking, my dad was tough. Believe me, he was tough. But his dad also was I guess in those days in Italy they had guys that went around and collect taxes. Was a tax collector, and so he had some men. And my father talked to his dad. He said, "Dad, let me just go to the United States and see what." I said, "Then I'll come back." And he never told my dad he was going to desert. My grandfather he was going to desert the army, and he took off. And in the meantime, his young brother, who I was named after, was killed in the war.
And this was World War I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so my father asked his father, he said, and he was in the army, he said, "Get me out of here." And he did. He made him go through Canada, came back in. Quite an interesting story. I wish I knew all the details of it.
And when he came to America, was he already married to your mother?
Yes, he was.
So they met when they were pretty young?
Yes. And in fact, Vic and Clyde were born. Angie and I weren't born yet. Angie was born in Kansas City. And I was in Michigan.
And as we were talking about earlier, that was your father was mining fluoride in Kansas City?
Mm-hmm.
And before that, he'd moved to New York. And how did you say he got off the boat? And what did you say the first thing he did was in New York?
Well, he walked around till he heard somebody speaking.
Speaking, yeah.
And then he grabbed him.
And he said,
he told him a story. "I'm here off the boat. Just got off the boat." They took care of him. It's the thing to do. That was pretty nice. Usually people didn't do it those days.
And you've told me before that he's lived in almost every state in the Union.
Yes, he has. See, because he was in construction and he worked on the dam, Hoover Dam. He worked on that, and he would go. They would tell him, "Hey, Charlie, a lot of good work over here." So he was all over the United States. And my mother still was in Italy with Vic and Clyde. Like I said, Angie was born in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
In all that time, he just migrated until he heard somebody speaking Italian. Then he stuck with him. He said, I just stayed with the guy. I don't care if I had to sleep in the basement or where, but I just saw I had somebody that could speak. And then he said eventually he started to pick up the language. So he could, in his broken English, he talked and the guys understood him. He was almost all over every state in this union working in construction. He was good at it.
So after Angie was born, you guys moved to Michigan, and that's where you were born.
Right.
And so he was working for the auto industry at that point?
Yeah.
And that was in Highland Park.
Right.
And was Vic working for the auto industry at that point?
Vic was, yes. And one reason he went back to that area was because of Henry Ford. Henry Ford, in those days, Matt, when they paid those auto workers, they got maybe $1 a day and so forth. Well, Henry Ford came along and said $5 a day. And then, and that's his first plant that he built was in Highland Park, where I was born. Plus, he had just like a Costco.
Like he had a general store, but it was like members only.
Oh yeah, only you had to work for Ford's, and you got your clothes. And my mother would borrow this guy across the streets a button and stuff and badge, and we go in there and get meat and stuff, and it was nice. It was different.
It was like a whole community, right?
Yes.
It had everything you needed there.
Yeah, it sure was, and that's what Henry Ford did. He was a son of a bitch, but he was good too at the rest of the things that he wanted to do, and he did it, for his people.
So those jobs are really in demand.
Yes.
People really want to live in those neighborhoods.
Right.
But it was still mostly immigrants?
Yes, and they pretty much divided the city that way. Highland Park, where the good portion of the north part, where people were like the professors and so forth, and doctors and lawyers, they lived there because it was very nice. And then the southern part where they had Chrysler plant, a Ford plant and stuff, that's where we lived. But it wasn't bad. You still got the same kind of privileges the rich got. You just didn't have that kind of money, that's all.
Yeah.
And I would go back and live that way. Wish you could live that way with them and my sons and stuff, because it was great. It really was. You didn't have a car, that's for sure. It cost too damn much money. My brother had a car to take my mother and dad any place they wanted to go, but he wouldn't. I said, "Pa, you gonna buy me a car?" He said, "No, you go work."
Now, when you were growing up, was Vic already out of the house?
No, at first he wasn't. At the end, he was. Yeah. In fact, see, our house that we had 2 bedrooms. So the girls, Angie and Clyde, had the front bedroom. My mother and dad had the middle bedroom. And for Vic and I to go to sleep, we had to walk through their bedroom, go up to the attic. Now we had one big advantage of this, going up to the attic. My dad had built a thing for my mother for her breads and her cakes and stuff. My brother and I'd go up, we'd eat them. Yeah. Then I would hear, "What going on?" And I, "Oh, Vic, Mama says something to me, I'm going to tell her you did." Oh, God. But we had no heat or nothing, he and I, You get a blanket. My mother made the mattress. She'd go down to where they had the chickens, and they'd give her the feathers and stuff, and she'd make the downs and all the stuff by herself. And I think that was a thing to watch them.
Yeah.
How they clean the stuff. No, I wouldn't trade my life in for nothing. I mean it.
And what did Clyde do for work?
Nothing. She stayed home.
She stayed home?
Yeah. The old man wanted to make sure she stayed home.
Yeah, because he was always looking out for her.
Yeah, she had to look after me and Angie, because she was fluent. When she came here, she was fluent in German, French, and Italian. Vic too.
Yeah.
They couldn't speak English. Then all of a sudden, Clyde picked it up real quick. And so she kind of interpreted for the neighborhood.
And you said that was how Vic moved up pretty quickly in the auto factories.
Yes, sir.
Because he could translate for everyone.
That's right, because they have guys that come over from Germany and stuff, and Vic could talk German, he could talk Spanish, French, and Italian. And he was good at it. He didn't know what he was talking about sometimes. It worked.
And growing up in your neighborhood, you had your best friends. They were a couple of guys, a John and another Jack. Is that right?
Yes. Jack was an Armenian.
What was Jack's last name?
Jack Marakian.
Jack Marakian.
Yeah. And then had George Winder, George Lapinus. We couldn't call him George Lecoq. His name was Lapinus. Those are my two best buddies.
Okay. And you went up through grade school and high school with them?
Yes.
And didn't you buy a zoot suit with one of them?
Yes. Yes. We all bought a zoot suit. One would pay for the pants, one would pay for the jacket, and we'd wear it because we're all about the same side.
But you'd trade off wearing it?
Yes. But the old man, you don't wear that shit around here. You know? Oh, he didn't. Those pink pants, he thought that was bad.
He didn't like your music?
Oh, he hated that music. He hated the music because I'd always be, you listen to that shit, that's what he'd say. Why don't you listen to good music?
And he listened to opera?
Oh, he loved opera. He loved opera. But you know, he just couldn't understand how we could like Glenn Miller and stuff. That was garbage.
Did your mother protect you at all?
Always. I had to have protection. They used to laugh. My sister and brother would say, "Oh, Papa's going to get you now." And I said, "Yeah, wait till I tell Mom." Well, I had it coming, a lot of it.
Did they speak English or Italian around the home?
They spoke Italian. I didn't. My Italian was very bad, but Angie could speak it pretty good. And she was born here, and Vic, like I say, Vic and Clyde knew 3 languages before they learned English.
One of the stories you didn't tell us was about your time in the asylum, or the sanitarium.
Sanitarium, yeah.
Will you tell me about that?
Yeah, I was so small at the time.
How old were you?
I had to be maybe 7, 8 years old. And now, my brother Vic, Clyde, myself, all got tuberculosis from a guy my father took in the house because he had no place to go and lived in a basement, and he spread it around. My dad didn't get it, my mother didn't get it. And like I said, Vic, Clyde, and I, because I was so small, they put me into a sanitarium not far from the home. Now Vic and Clyde went to regular tuberculosis places out in the countrysides. So now my father didn't drive, so he had to wait for somebody that he knew would take him to the different places. Now, where I was at was actually in the city of Detroit, so they could take a streetcar, and it was a hard way for them to go, but they could do it. And so my mother and Clyde would come out there every day, try to see what I was doing, and could I help them, or could they help me do anything.
Was Angie there too?
Angie was, I'm trying to think of where she was. No, she stayed at home. That's right. She was left at home. She was the only one, I think. Because Vic was put away, Clyde was put away at Herman Kiefer Hospital, and Vic was, I can't even think of the name of that one, but yeah, Angie stayed home. So
how long were you in the sanitarium?
Almost a year and a half, and they came out almost every day.
What was it, scary?
Yeah, I think it was for a little guy. But after a while, I got used to it because there was 2 guys in a room, and it was really out in the country. So I guess one of the treatments they had in those days was to put you outside in the fresh air so that you could breathe good air. And so you'd be out there alone for 2 or 3 hours.
just playing around in the woods and in the fields?
Mm-hmm.
Were there other kids?
Oh, yes.
So you had a bunch of people to play with?
Yes.
They make you go to school there too?
Oh, yes. We had to go to school. The school was held in the hospital. So you'd have to go one and one is two and so forth. So you didn't get out of that. So they pretty much kept you on the regular curriculum that you would have in your private life. So, but it wasn't fun because your buddies weren't around and nothing. And there was, you know, a lot of nights I cried. You know, I wanted to be home.
What, did a lot of kids in your neighborhood get tuberculosis? Was that a big fear?
There were quite a few got it. Yes, I don't know how many, but there was at least half of the kids in the neighborhood got it. It was all over in Detroit. It was everybody had it because it was so much. See, again, due to Henry Ford, everybody came there because he was paying $5 a day.
Yeah.
They didn't care if they had tuberculosis.
Yeah.
You know, they just came in and didn't have to clear nothing.
Yeah.
So I imagine a lot of it was spread that way.
Okay, so when you were in high school and when you were growing up, what did you and your friends like to do other than listening to Glenn Miller music?
The thing we like to do, go to a show, you know, once a week and so forth. We'd love to go to, say, see the Tigers play or the Red Wings and stuff, but that was a waste of money as far as my father was concerned. You know, you're not going to get it, so we didn't get a chance to see that. But we did get a chance to, you know, play ball.
A lot of baseball?
Yes. A lot of baseball.
And you're a lefty, so you played first base.
Yes.
Were you a pretty good hitter?
Yeah, I did real good. They wanted me down in the minor leagues. And just then, you know, of course, I went into Don Riddler at Lawrence Tech. Started at Lawrence Tech to go on a skirt because the basketball was great. And we were a small school, and we couldn't compete with football with all those guys. So he got these guys from Indiana, where the good basketball players were from, and he started building it up. And then what he did was very clever. He was an organizer. He set up a game like Lawrence Tech against NYU, and right after the game, they'd clear out the gym and they'd have a dance man, Glenn Miller, come in. And the place would be jammed, and we loved it. You know, it was great. Nobody's ever done it since.
This is all in college?
Yes. And he was good. He also had a lot of influence throughout that region, and he could get us jobs, you know, like at Ford or General Motors or a printing press or something like that. It was nice.
But you got to Lawrence Tech through the GI Bill, but you entered World War II as a Marine.
Yes.
But you were pretty young.
Yeah, I sure was.
How old were you?
I was 17 when I went in.
And you signed up for you volunteered?
Yeah.
But if you had to be 18 to be in, you lied about your age, right?
I did. Yeah.
How'd that go?
Real good. Never got caught. In fact, the funny part about this thing is, now I can't tell my father or my mother that I'm going in the Marine Corps. They wouldn't. They understood it. They didn't want it. My father, like I said, lost a brother, and he didn't want to. You know, no part of me being in a place where I could get killed. So I told him we went. Jack Marakian, Martin Bargwich, and myself went down, enlisted in the Marine Corps. Jack couldn't get in because he had flat feet. My head punctured eardrums and everything else. I was the only guy who got in. So they being a Navy car, came, picked me up at our house and took me down to the train station. I turn around and who's at the train station but Angie and my dad. What the hell are they doing here? And my father said, why'd you lie to us? Why didn't you tell us the truth? I said, Pa, I couldn't tell you the truth because you wouldn't let me go. He said, well, maybe I'm not going to let you go now. I thought, ooh, I'll be in trouble. But no, he said, okay. But he said, where's your clothes? I said, what do I need clothes for? He said, you're going from Michigan to California. Don't you have to change your clothes? And your underclothes and stuff like that? So he sent my sister across the street to Sam's and bought me some clothes to go. Otherwise, I wasn't going to tell him.
Yeah.
I was going to stay in that dirty clothes all the way. It stunk pretty good.
Yeah.
Because those trains took 4 days to get across the country.
Were the trains filled with other
Marines and
guys who
Army
just signed up?
And Navy, and they drop them off at different spots. Yeah.
Was everyone on the train pretty nervous, or were you guys excited?
I think we were a little apprehensive that we didn't know what was coming.
So it was pretty quiet in there?
Yes. There was no wild stuff. I think guys were worried. Well, am I going to be dead?
And you've told me a story before about when they came forward. I think it was a high-ranking officer came forward to all the young men who had volunteered, and they said, "We're really proud of you," and they asked you about your ages. Do you know the story I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's true. That's how they got them out of there. They'd call them in and they said, "We're so proud of you guys for enlisting in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is the toughest one of all the services and so forth. But the ones we are the most proud of are you guys that lied about your age to get in the Marine Corps. Would you guys stand up? Because we want to thank you and give you a hand." So everybody stood up that they were underage. And he had guys going behind them, grabbing them, taking them. They discharged them, gave them tickets and sent them home. That was kind of a smart way to get them out of there. But, I don't blame them. We lied. They knew we were lying.
But they didn't catch you?
No.
Kept your mouth shut?
That's right.
And where were you stationed?
My boot camp was in San Diego, here.
In Camp Pendleton?
No, there was no Camp Pendleton. Camp Elliott and Matthew. And one of them was right on by the golf course, Torrey Pines. I think it's still there. Pendleton came later. And Matthew was over there by where 15 goes up and down.
Oh, Rancho Bernardo or Scripps Ranch, that area?
And they went through there, through the rifle range and so forth.
And how long were you in boot camp?
Boot camp was about a month and a half.
Pretty tough?
Yeah, you bet it was. That's where they clean them out and get rid of them. And from there, you had to go through tests, and they said, with your ability, you should be in the Marine Air Corps. I said, I can't fly. No, we don't want you to fly. You're mechanically inclined. They give you a lot of good tests. And so you'd be a good plane captain. In other words, you know how to tighten the screws and so forth. So that's how I got in the Marine Air Corps, which was fine with me.
So they sent you to where?
They sent me to Norman, Oklahoma, to aviation school. Then back here I was at Elliott. They had for gunnery school. Then I was here, and then from there we got aboard a carrier. They were going to put us on a carrier. We got to Oakland, and they said no, it wouldn't work. So they sent us back, and they sent me up to Goleta.
Up by Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara. And they just opened an air base there, which was kind of nice with all the girls.
Don't worry, I don't think Grandma can hear us. I think she and Dad are outside.
Okay.
So you were stationed in Goleta, which is just north of Santa Barbara in Central California. And what year was this? Is this 1942, 43? 43.
Yeah.
And you'd already finished boot camp, and so at this point you're a mechanic.
We're there waiting to get orders to go overseas.
And what sort of planes were you working on?
At that time we had the Orco, was a brand new plane. It was a Corsair, the winged airplane.
With propellers, right?
Yeah. And that was fast. That was a good plane. A lot of pilots got killed because it was too fast for them.
And you told me a story about the first time you saw a jet.
I couldn't believe it. This is true. We're all, when our planes take off and go practice and so forth, you just sit around the hangar and baloney with your buddies, you know. We're just sitting there, and all of a sudden we see this plane coming. It was getting dusk, and I said to this guy, in fact his name was Matt. I said, Matt, that plane's on fire. Yeah, he said, let's go, let me go. So he went and he called Joe Fall, was our commanding officer. And he said, I see the plane's on fire. He said, well, tell get the Air Force, the Marines,
Fire brigade?
Fire brigade to get going. So they did. They had all the planes off the runways, and all the fire trucks are sitting there, and here comes this Army plane. He comes landing out. And there's nothing wrong.
It was just a jet? Did the pilot look at you guys like you were crazy?
It's the first jet we ever saw.
Yeah.
We never saw a jet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw all that planes coming. It was on fire. They all laughed about it. They didn't at first, but it worked good.
Now you told me you were a good swimmer as a youth, and then you would go swim off the coast.
Yeah, we did all the time.
And
loved it.
And you had a story about a rip current.
You better believe it. That's the first time I ever heard about a rip current. I was my grandmother could tell you stuff, but I was a lifeguard, back in Highland Park and stuff, and stuff like that didn't bother me. And I knew that if you got in trouble with somebody, they always try to grab you to save themselves. So you had to know how to pull them under and so forth. And I did all that. And so when I got out in the Marine Corps, I also was told, we're going to put you as a lifeguard on these things, so that you could tell people what to do. Well, the first time I ever did it was with my own buddies. And this one guy, Ziggy, he couldn't swim. I didn't know it. So they threw him off the dock, And he went down. And Joe Fall says, hey, Dago, get in there. So I jumped off the dock and ran and got him. And damn it, he was drowning. I didn't realize it. I pulled him up. I got a lot of help from the boss, and I told him, I said, well, I didn't know it. I thought he knew how to swim, and he was just playing with us. He said, well, there's no playing around here anymore, no fucking around. He gave it to us good. From then on in, we knew what a rip current was, because we got caught in it.
Take you right out to sea.
Oh, it took us, yes. And I got scared. I have to admit to that.
Yeah.
You think you're smart enough and strong enough to swim against it. They're powerful. Have you ever hit one of them?
Oh, yeah.
You better be powerful.
So you guys weren't too far from San Francisco.
No.
Being at the base. So you guys would go up there every once in a while?
Yeah, we'd rather go to San Francisco than any place. When we got to leave, we'd go to San Francisco area.
Now, how'd you get there?
Hitchhike.
Didn't you also have something arranged with the trains coming through?
Oh yeah. Also the trains. Those guys would stop for us, get on the back end, and they'd take us into town. Yeah, you got a good memory, buddy.
So you go hang out for the weekend and go dancing and listen to music and
come on back, yeah.
And you've told a story about one time coming back.
And the train didn't stop.
So what were you thinking? You're riding the train and it's supposed to slow down.
Yeah, and I'm not jumping off, those trains are moving. And we went all the way to, not quite to San Francisco, when it stopped.
You're going south though. Did it stopped in L.A.?
Yes.
Almost L.A.? Yeah.
And we got out and raised hell with the guy, and he said, well, why don't you tell us these things, We just stopped the train a little bit for you. I guess it was our fault.
So it was a new guy.
Yeah.
And so you're 100 miles too far south. How'd you make it back?
Hitchhike. Yeah.
There were a couple of you guys that got stuck?
Yeah. 3 of us, yeah.
And Did your buddies try and cover for you?
Oh yeah, they knew it.
So there's roll call, and what happened?
Roll call, and then Fontanesi, Private Fontanesi, here, sir. Private Matthew, here, sir. They knew it.
That's good buddies, though.
Yeah, they knew it.
Were you still stationed in Santa Barbara when the war ended?
Yes.
And once the war ended, where'd you go?
They sent me to Great Lakes, disciplinary barracks. It was prisoners, our own prisoners, Navy and Marines. And so that was close to home, so I could get home on weekends. And they tried to do that, you know, for all the guys in the service at that time. So that made it pretty good. And you'd work deals with your buddies. Say, hey, you work for 2 weeks, and then I'll work the next 2 weeks. And as long as they knew, they let you go. They knew that you were going to get discharged the minute they told you that you could go.
So you were back in Michigan. At what point did you use the GI Bill to go to Lawrence Tech?
I say within 2 weeks of being home.
You knew you were ready to go back to school?
Yes. And Don Riddler, who started all this stuff, knew about me from high school because he was a referee and so forth. And I had all my clothes ready to go. And I played ball for the Marine Corps. And these guys knew me, and I was supposed to be going to West Virginia. I had all my clothes packed and everything, my mother. And just then the doorbell rang. And here's this Don Riddler standing at the door. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I was just going to get on a train to go to West Virginia. And he said, how about Lawrence Tech? So I lived there all my life and didn't know what Lawrence Tech was. And he said, well, it's an engineering school, but we're branching out now to other general subjects. So I said, okay. In fact, I was all dressed, ready to get on the damn train to take off. And I told my mom and dad, and they said, yeah, stay here. You could live at home, and you know, it worked out good.
And so Lawrence Tech was an engineering school in Michigan?
Engineering and business administration. That's all they dealt in.
And at what point did you meet Grandma?
My sophomore year. She didn't live far from where my mother and dad lived. And I used to see her get on a bus. You know, so same bus I got on. You know. And then she was always talking to this old guy. And this one guy, King, that lived in Illinois. I tried to get him to go to school at Lawrence Tech because he was a hell of a good baseball player beside basketball. And so he was on he did consent to go for the first semester. So our coach got him the job too, working at Briggs Manufacturing. And we'd get on a bus, and there would be Grandpa Bandish, who we didn't know, and here's your grandmother getting on a bus, and then the two of them talk, and blah, 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 blah. And I'd say to my buddy, man, if I had a good-looking girl like that, you know, I'd let her have my seat. I could kick her up, and Grandpa would laugh. You know, he wouldn't look at me. So the first time I got a date with her, I went to
how did you get a date with Grandma?
Well, I told her, I said, hey, Lawrence Tech has these bands that come in. Would you like to go with me? I noticed that you're always with your cousin jitterbugging and so forth when you get on the bus. And she said, sure. So she went with me. Our first date, we went to see, I think they had Glenn Miller or somebody come in. But anyway, I got on the bus, and here's Grandpa again, sitting there. And your grandma talked to him, and I said to, as John King, I said, you know, if that was my daughter, I'd get up and give him a seat. I wouldn't let her just sit there and talk. And then when I got to their house, knocked, who was there but Grandpa? He laughed. He laughed so hard. He said, oh, you wouldn't do this, eh? I said, no. Things you do, you don't realize you get caught.
Yeah.
But everything worked.
So you've told stories about when you and Grandma were dating, and you'd go over to their house, and you and Grandma would be sitting in the front parlor talking.
Oh, Grandpa, all the time. He'd make sure that I left that house before he went to bed. He didn't want me to touch his daughter. And he'd always
letting you know he was there.
Yeah, he's ready to go to bed for me to get the hell out of the house.
And you had a story about a chair.
You know, Grandma and I always sat in this chair together, and this one time we sat in the chair and we broke it. Down it went. Shouldn't be screwing around in a chair. Oh yeah.
So how long were you guys dating before you got married?
I think about a year and a half.
Year and a half?
Mm-hmm.
And you guys moved in together, and you were still at Lawrence Tech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we lived at Grandma's house first.
Okay.
When we first got married.
Your mother or Grandma's mother?
Grandma's mother.
Okay.
Grandpa put us in the basement. Yeah. So, and that was okay because I was gone all day long working. You know, if I wasn't playing sports at the time, I'd be working, like, you know, doing stuff at the college. And he made sure that any of his players he had any for baseball, I was playing baseball for him. Basketball and whatever sport they had. He made sure those guys all had jobs that would pay for them. Mm-hmm. The college would pay. And it worked good. It really did. And
you had some real good friends from college.
Yes.
And Grandma likes to tell a story about you guys were studying for a test.
Yeah, we were studying our ass off, and finally we said, the hell with it.
And she came down, what'd she see?
Well, she's raised all kind of hell with us. But no, we were watching dirty movies.
I heard you were playing hearts.
Oh, we were doing that too. We did that, yeah.
So she thought you were. So Grandma thought you were playing cards, or Grandma thought you were studying. She comes down and finds you playing cards.
That's right, she did. That's true. But we would watch dirty movies. You know, you could rent them at that time. Oh, it was good. Life was good.
Okay, Gramps. Now, so you had 4 kids. My father, John, being the oldest, and then how much older was he than Joanne? It's about 2 years.
About a year older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Jim.
Jimmy.
And he was Joanne's a couple years older than Jim.
Jim.
And then
Joe.
Yeah. So Joe's the baby.
Yeah.
Now what were they like as kids? What was my dad like?
You never could find a better kid than he was. He was strong. Nobody picked on him, you know. But he made sure that Joey was protected and Jimmy was protected. If somebody would pick on him, he'd be over there real fast. I always laughed about it.
I heard a story that when he was little, he was scared to go to school. Somebody had to walk him there.
Oh yeah.
Who was that?
Grandma and I walked him to school all the time.
What about the Hutchinson boy?
Yeah. Oh, that Tommy was his best buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He lived right across the street. I forgot about him.
And was Tommy older, or was Tommy the same age?
Same age.
Same age.
Same age. Yeah. And he'd be in front of John, and John would be holding his shirt. Tommy Hutch was his buddy.
And I've seen some old photos, and my dad liked to dress up like a cowboy.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He had his boots, his hat. You know, you'd get from them, Matt, you'd get how come we got to make our air beds and Joanne doesn't have to make her bed? I said, it's just because Joanne doesn't have to make it. You do. You know, Mom and I make Joanne's bed. Why? Your dad's special. You always had to have a reason. Your dad you had to give him a reason, you know. And I said, no, I don't have to give you no reason, John. I'm just telling you she don't have to make her bed. You do. That's it. No argument. And he'd stop, but about 2 weeks later he'd say, I still don't understand that. That's not fair. Oh, they had a lot of good life, they did.
Yeah.
Together.
And they were growing up in Oak Park?
Yes.
And my dad had a dog.
Yes, he did.
Well, do you remember the dog's name?
Yes, Sparky.
Blackie?
Blackie. Yeah.
What kind of dog was it?
A mongrel.
Yeah.
And he, and I don't know where we got it from, but he spent time with that dog. You won't believe, Matt, what he taught that dog. I think I told you, he'd take a piece of salami, he'd put it on the dog's nose, and he'd say, no. And that dog wouldn't touch it. Just leave it there. He'd say, no. And he'd say, okay. The dog would flip it up and eat it. And he did all kind of tricks with that dog. In fact, at the school, they took the dog and let him do that stuff. Now, where we first lived, we weren't far from a school that, you know, that you could walk to it. But Joanne, she couldn't keep up with the rest of us, so we'd fall behind. But your dad would never let her be back in the back end. He'd always be with her and get her to go over there. You know, yeah, but he always had his dog too. He got thrown out of school a couple of times with the dog. Yeah, he loved it. The dog was his.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good old Blackie.
And do you remember what happened to Blackie?
Mary Ann thinks somebody's poisoned him.
Really?
Yeah. And that would be my fault because I'd let him run loose. And I think one of the neighbors down the street did. He came home, he was sicker, the dog, and the next day he was gone.
That's too bad.
Yeah. Your dad broke his heart. You know, and broke mine, I gotta be honest with you. I liked that dog. Then I let them get their own dogs later. All he cared about is going up north.
My dad?
With Sullivan and Maloney and those guys. One time they got in trouble, and there wasn't that. The lady said that these guys raped her, and it wasn't your dad, and it wasn't the rest of them. And finally, I don't know whose father was a lawyer, Maloney's father or what the other. He went up there, and he got her to confess that she did that to spite her husband.
She said they set her on fire, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she said all these bad things. She did the things to herself. And Maloney's dad was a lawyer, and I think Sullivan's dad was a lawyer too. They went up there and got the boys out.
This was up north?
Yeah, up to Coda. Those guys would go there every summer. They didn't want to work. They wanted to fish and hunt.
It's a good life.
Yeah. I went, and we were up to Cooney's place. It was a gorgeous place. McLeod Steel owned it, and Cooney bought it from him. And he had dams on it and everything. And you'd hear those guys, pow, pow, pow. I said, what are you shooting at? Well, the squirrel just got away. I said, there is no squirrel here. They're just shooting. They shoot at anything. That's all they ever wanted to do.
Good for them, being boys.
Yes. But I enjoyed all my kids, and Grandma did too. They were pretty good. They were good students. Your dad and probably Jimmy the best. Joe got by with, you know, he was a lover boy. Everybody loved him.
Joe's charming.
Yeah.
Joe's a big football star, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Joe and your dad. Your dad was a big star. Jimmy didn't do bad, but he wasn't a star. You know, he's just a troublemaker. But your dad and Joey were good ball players.
My dad said that my dad was always competing with cousin Kenny.
Yeah. Kenny was a good player too, but he was in another school.
He was a year older though?
Yes. Yes. And he got a scholarship to, was it Iowa State or one of those big schools? And your dad could have got it any school he wanted. He really could. He had more offers than Kenny did. Different schools. You know, you see, we'd watch a game and he never wanted us around to see him. So Grandma and I would sit up back in the bleachers so that he couldn't see us. And he's always played defense, except if they got down close to the goal line, they put him in on offense. And I said to him one day, I said, John, I see you going in and going out, and I said, you know the plays? You don't know the play when I ask you at home. He said, no, what's the difference? All I do is I go back and I tell them, follow me. He would. And they'd follow him, and he'd push him out of the way. You know, that was your dad. You didn't have to have no other instruction. Push him out of the way. I said, John, what do you think you got to play for? He said, well, you don't need that stuff. You know, you tell me, Dad, what's wrong with what I just said? I said, nothing wrong with it. But then you don't need, you know, plays for other things. Oh, yeah, you need them for the other things, but you don't need them for going across a goal line. You follow the guy that can open the hole for you. Well, he's right, isn't he? He's absolutely right. And he could do that. He was powerful.
A couple of my dad's teammates ended up playing professional, right?
Yes.
And you guys they knew the family well?
Yeah. Your dad would have been a pro. He's very easy. Every school was after him in his senior year. And I think because my mother and dad were in Arizona, Tucson, he was very attached to my mother and dad. He'd go there, and that's of course where you met your mother too. And he lived in the stadium up above. Just as a freshman, he was first string for University of Tucson. You know, he was a good ball player. But again, it was just follow me. You know, you don't know no number, just follow me.
You told him. I always heard a story about you offering to buy him a car.
That's right.
Do you know the story?
Yep. I tell him I'll buy you any car you want.
What were the conditions?
Just get a scholarship. And he come home and see, he was, well, he's Brother Rice. Brother Rice had people like Lee Iacocca, his kids were there, and from Chrysler Kids and so forth. He come home, he says, Dad, I know the car I want. And I'll go to any school you tell me to go to. I said, what do you want? He says, Lamborghini. I said, who told you about that, John? He said, that's not for you to know. You just said, if you'll buy me any car I want if I could take a scholarship. I said, well, you don't have to take a scholarship. Cheaper for me to pay your school than buying a Lamborghini. You don't think I know what a Lamborghini is? I said, I've been around here with your Uncle Vic. He works at those places. And I asked him, he said, oh yeah. Did he ever tell you that?
Yeah.
Lamborghini? I told him, forget it. No. But that was good because then he went down and met your mother.
Yeah, I don't think he had any intention of playing or taking the scholarship. I think he just wanted to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I do too. I really do.
Yeah.
And they had at Brother Rice, they had a lot of professional athletes, boys, going to that school. So they put a lot of pressure on the guys. But your dad was head and heels over guys like Leon Hart's son. Your dad could whip him in 5 seconds. The guy was bigger than your dad. Yeah, but see, your dad, you're always a philosopher. Why do you have to do this or why do you do that? And he would say, I'd say, John, you're better than Leon Hart's boy, and he's bigger than you, and you're a pretty big boy. He said, yeah, he's weak, Dad. I said, yeah, but that means you're strong. You can't say he's weak. He's strong against the other guys, but not against you. So that's how you had to equate. Oh, I guess you're right. But him and Terry Sullivan and Ed Naughton, those guys, the minute school was done, they were up north, fishing, hunting. I'd go up with Grandma, go see what the hell they're doing. They're having a ball. I said, what are you eating? Oh, we don't have no problem eating. We catch fish and stuff, and we sell them to the people and get some money for a hot dog. Those guys did everything.
Yeah.
You're crazy. You're good.
And what about Joanne?
Joanne was another one that had illnesses and bad, and she was born with them. She's deaf and everything else. And the thing that saved Joanne more, I think, than anybody, Mary Ann, your grandma, had a couple of young doctors from the University of Michigan, and she kept telling them about Joanne, all the problems she had. She couldn't sleep at night. She'd be thrown up. She'd eat dinner. It would be gone. Couldn't gain weight. And he told your grandmother, he said, I got 2 young guys just getting out of the University of Michigan. And these guys are good. They're with, the children and out with adults. So he says, I'll set you up. And he did. He set Grandma up. So I went with Grandma and we took Joanne down. The Children's Hospital, they were operating out of there, and Grandma would know their names, and they told us all the medicine she's on, and we're taking her off of everything, and you wouldn't believe the spurt of growth. They took her off of everything but what she basically needed. The other doctors just give her, some salesman walked in and said, here, take this is good, give it to your kids. They would take it. These guys would. Rubinoff and can't think of the other guy's name. Grandma would know. But they were outstanding. And with that, Joanne grew. She started getting height. She started to eat. She still couldn't hear very well, she was smart. She used it to her advantage. No, we had a good, tight group family. I really appreciate it. And Grandma held them together because I had to work a lot of hours. I just started my own business then. When Joanne was, getting up in the school systems, and then she couldn't run or walk with the kids. They'd say, well, she could go out and play with the kids, but she couldn't run. Now, how do you do that? How do you tell a kid you can't run? I'm not going to be there watching them, and the teachers aren't. But everything worked out good. It really did.
What was it like having one girl and one daughter in a house full of boys?
The girl got everything she wanted. The boys had to pay for it. And they'd get smacked and stuff. She wouldn't.
That's good. You got to look out for her.
Oh, yes, she did.
Did she play that to her advantage?
Oh, yeah. The boys were good to her, though. They really would. If they had found out especially your dad, he'd found out anybody hit her or something at school, he'd be on them, be on their case. And we'd get a report back, well, your son picked on this guy. Then we'd find out why he did it. We'd go back to the school and tell them, and they said, oh, we didn't know it. So your dad was a protector of her, helped her a lot.
I want you to tell me about Joanne's first prom.
Okay, she left. It was your dad's idea too. Get the shotguns and stuff and stand on the front porch and clean them up. And this young, nice kid comes up, and here's your dad and myself with guns. That poor girl.
How did Joanne take it?
She didn't like it. Grandma didn't like it. But that was your dad and me. We did do it.
Was this a boy that she was seeing at school, or was this somebody who just asked her out for the dance?
I'm not sure of that. I think it was just a guy that asked her to go out to the date that time, or a prom, wherever they were going. But it was your dad's idea, staying on a porch with the guns. So.
She have too many dates after that?
I don't know. I think she and her mother got together. They go get John and I, throw us out of your dad and I, throw us out of the house. When Joanne and John went to school, I bought them each a car. And I had a nice big garage. And I used to teach them how to change your oil and stuff like that. Well, Joanne, that was just a waste of time. Because she went to school all the way up in Marquette. And she'd come home and the red light would be on. And I said, Joanne, didn't Dad tell you what that red light meant? She said, yeah, check your engine. I said, did you do it? She said, well, I got to the bridge and I figured the bridge home was real small. I didn't check anything. Next time the boys were playing basketball. And all of a sudden I heard, Dad, come here, you got to see this. You won't believe this. So I run out, and here's her back tire going down. A big nail in it.
Where was the car?
Excuse me, what'd you say?
Where was the car when you saw the...
Oh, it was on a driveway. She made it 500 and some miles without it going flat, but she got on my driveway and went flat. Don't tell me she didn't have an angel on her shoulder. Absolutely went flat, Matt. You wouldn't believe it. A nail that big and about that wide is a huge thing. This is your dad. Dad, you got to come out here and see this.
She's always had someone looking out for her.
Yeah, she had an angel. She did. She had somebody upstairs.
So tell me about Jim. What was Jim like as a little boy?
Jim was the biggest troublemaker there ever was. I'm serious. That guy was in trouble with his teachers, with his buddies. He didn't care. I never saw a kid like that.
What did Jim mean by bumping his head on the pillow to get to sleep?
Oh my
Jim
kept the whole house up.
So I want you to tell me the story about how Jim tried to help you stop smoking cigarettes.
Oh man. I don't know how to answer that one, because I don't think he's the guy that made me start smoking. He's cuckoo.
Did Jim always get blamed for things?
Well, Jim usually did something wrong all the time. He did. He was always in trouble.
Like what about what were some of the things that Jim would do?
Well, like Joanne had hearing aids. He'd go take them and hide them and stuff like that. Now it's time to go to school. She got no hearing aids. I gotta cancel meetings, go there and help try to find them. But Jimmy knew where they were and stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff that you do.
You're just playing around,
yeah,
causing trouble.
Yeah, with his sister, he just, you know, he'd do everything, take stuff out of her drawers.
Tell me the story about Jim hitting the garbage man with a rock.
Okay. Jim and the Hutchison boys across the street, they always liked to play army. And so they liked to throw bombs, you know. So the garbage truck came down the street. They right away assumed that it's a tank. So as they went by a little bit, they started throwing it and they hit the guy. The guy on the back end of it, and they put a nice gouge in his head.
This is Jim and Jackie Hutchison?
Yeah. They both said the other one threw it. I know it was my Jim. Yeah, true. True story. It popped the guy right in the head. We didn't go to jail.
Did they get in trouble?
Yeah.
Jim said Aunt Clyde saved him.
She sure did.
How'd she do that?
She talked to him. She was good. People believed her. These guys are just playing army. They were going to get the tank and sink it.
How old was Jim at the time?
I don't think they were in grade school yet.
So 3 or 4, maybe 5 years old?
Yeah.
Do you remember a Boy Scout trip with Jim to the Osable River with Richard Rich?
Yes. That was a disaster. I could have killed your Uncle Jim. Yeah.
How old was he at the time?
Boy Scouts, you have to be what, 12?
12, 13?
12, yeah. He was the biggest troublemaker there ever was.
So you guys went out to the Osable River.
Yeah.
And were you one of the parents who was in charge?
Yes.
Were there other parents, or is it just
yes.
you?
No, there was another set parents. I'm trying to think of their name. But that was a disaster trip. Those guys would do anything to get it out on the river.
You were taking Jim and his Boy Scout troop to the Osable River. So were there were other parents going with you?
Maybe one other set. In fact, there was only one other. Yeah.
And how many boys?
About 20.
It's a pretty good group. And you guys were camping on the river?
Right on the river, right on the shore. We had tents put up, and all that stuff, and
you guys have been down the river before, so you knew the place.
Yeah.
So you knew all the good spots to hang out. And
I was down that river when I was in grade school and high school myself. Everybody wanted to go. That's the most famous river in Michigan, the Osable. A lot of stories written about it, and there was a lot of mining and gold and stuff up that way. You shift, and all of a sudden you got a agate of gold. I got one. Grandma got it someplace.
So in this part of the river where you guys were, you were canoeing down the river, right?
Yes.
Trees all over the place, and you guys would look for tire swings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the story about Richard Rich?
The story about
Richie Rich, Jim's buddy? He's one of the Boy Scouts, right?
Yes. He was scared to death that he was going to drown in the canoe. And we did everything possible to make him feel good. And he was Jimmy's best buddy. You know, and of course Jimmy then starts to tease him and so forth. He did fall in, but we were there to grab him right real quick. And of course he cried all the way. You know, we tried to drown him and this and that. And your Uncle Jim's just sitting there laughing.
Did you ever take him to the tire swings?
I took him there and told him that we were going to tire him. Yes. Not only him, Jimmy and his group. And that's true. Who told you that one?
Little bird told me.
Yeah, that's true. I said, I'm going to tire you guys up. They believed it.
Did he go?
No, they were very quiet. They didn't get in trouble from then on in.
When Jim and Joe were teenagers, did they sneak out much?
They tried, but they couldn't get away with it.
So
the hawk caught them every time.
So I heard Tom Allen tried to get one of the boys to sneak out.
Yeah. Upper flat, where the bedrooms were. Matt, you had the first floor, you got a basement, first floor, and the second floor had all the bedrooms. So these guys would come up and they sneak up the steps and go into Jimmy's room and shake him and say, come on, let's go. And go. We didn't hear it half the times. Well, this one time, I kept a bat by my bed. All of a sudden I heard these guys coming up the steps. Start to swing at him, and Mr. Van Dusen said, Mr. Font, no, it's us. Don't hit us. We're trying to get Jimmy.
It wasn't Tom. It was Tom Allen?
It was Jimmy Allen. Jimmy Allen, that's right.
All right, so Jimmy Allen sneaking up the steps, and you had a bat underneath the bed.
Yeah. And so I went after him with the bat. I didn't know it was him, but he sure begged.
So what was Joe like as a little boy?
He was like your dad, very lovable, a lot of fun. Those two guys had just about the same personalities. He was a good athlete, like your dad, but if he could be out screwing around with somebody, you know, he'd rather do that than play football or baseball or basketball or anything. He played all three of them for a while.
I heard on the way to Coda one time, used to let Jim and Joe play in the back of the station wagon. Do you know what story I'm about to ask about?
Yes, when you almost set the station wagon on fire.
You want to tell me that story?
Yeah, I didn't even know they had matches and stuff back there, but they're sitting in the back and they're
Jim and Joe.
Joe, yeah, and lighting these things up.
What are they lighting on fire?
Pieces of paper, and all of a sudden, you see this stuff billowing out the back, and we pull over. I just got them out of there in time. I just ripped everything out of the back and let it burn on the ground. Dad, we didn't mean it, you know.
Give you the quivering lower lip.
Oh yes. And your father would sit there and laugh. Just absolutely laugh.
How old were Jim and Joe at that time?
Oh, I say maybe about 14.
That old?
Yeah.
I
might have been a little bit younger.
It sounded like Jim got blamed for that incident. The way
and it was Joe's fault.
Do you remember playing football in the living room?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Okay. We always had to wait till Grandma left.
Would she go to the store? Or?
Store, shopping, and so forth. Then we would move all the furniture to the side, and we would play. And just like we had a line, if you made first down, second down, and so forth. And if we played in the front room where we shouldn't play, so you could see if Grandma was coming in, and with the car. Well, I don't know who hit Joanne, but they hit her pretty hard. They really hurt her, and all of a sudden Grandma comes in. You know, what are you guys doing? No, she hollers at me, don't you watch the kids where I'm going? Well, she was right. You know, we were wrong. But that was Jimmy.
Everyone just hanging out, having a good time.
That guy had gotten more trouble than anybody I ever knew.
I heard you used to take the belt to him every once in a while. And one time he tried to get around it. He added some padding to his backside?
Yep.
What did he add?
He had pillows.
And
And I beat the hell out of him, and he didn't cry. And I told Grandma, I said, you know, there's something wrong. And she said, why? I said, I smacked the hell out of him, and he almost laughed at me. He said, Jimmy, come here. I come down, I said, pull your pants down. They're taped on. Oh, that guy got into more trouble than Carter got liver pills.
I heard one time there was a mix-up in driver's licenses.
Oh, yeah? Yes, I remember this one real good.
So who was involved?
Okay, it was Grandma and I, okay, and Joe and Jim, and we got a call from the police.
The boys were how old?
Oh,
Jim must have been 18, right?
not quite, but pretty close to it.
Okay.
And Joey, of course, younger. And what we got a call. Do you remember the neighborhood?
Of Birmingham?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Telegraph Road's the main drag, like stuff there. And on this one corner, there's a big stop sign and gas stations. And it's a main drag. So the police said, we have your son here, or we're not allowing him to drive anymore. Where at? So they told us where it was at. So I had to go all the way back from our house to this corner, and here there was. The police car was there. Here's Jimmy's car that Joey took, borrowed. And we walked up, and the police said what they did, and they said, okay, you can take them home now. And I don't know how it went. Oh, yeah, you can take them home, but one drive one car and Marianne drive the other. And with that, the police said to Joe, and he knew Joe, because he knew Jimmy, see. He said, okay, Jimmy, we let you off easy this time, but don't you ever do that again. And Grandma wasn't going to let that go by. She said, what do you mean, Jimmy? That's not Jimmy, that's Joe. Now, what's the poor guy going to do? The guy knew Joe. And Grandma was right. You know, she wasn't going to let it. He got in a lot of trouble with that one.
So Joey was borrowing Jim's driver's license?
Yeah.
So he could go drive?
Yeah. Son of a gun.
And where was Jim during all of this?
He, I don't know what they finally did with him. I know I wouldn't speak to him for about a year. Stay away from me. Oh, he could get in more trouble, Matt. Jimmy. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff he would do. He'd steal stuff from his sister or for his brother. You know, if he needed a pencil, he'd take John's pencil. Wouldn't tell him.
So, did you guys do a lot of stuff outdoors?
Yes, we did. Your dad, I loved the outdoors, and I would go up north, you know, and your dad started coming along with me, and then the whole families did. And we fished, and we hiked, and go through the woods, and do all the crazy things that you shouldn't do. And it was nice. It really was.
Where would you guys go fishing and hunting?
We'd go up to Coda. Up, it's in the thumb up, and right by the Huron River, and I forgot what lake it was. One of the Great Lakes. It wasn't the Michigan Lake, but it was just so nice. We could rent a boat, go out, fish, catch the fish, give it away because Grandma wouldn't cook it. Yeah, it was funny. But no, and my brother that would be kind of funny too, because the minute he found out that I was up north with the kids, some reason or other he'd come flying around that way. He'd come and he'd say, oh, just passed by. I said, oh yeah, come on Vic, stay. So he'd stay a couple of days, and he'd take them on the boat.
Because he always liked to hang out?
Yeah, he knew a hell of a lot more about fishing than I did. All I knew was put a hook in and, you know, throw a piece of meat or something over the boat and hope a fish catches it. Vic knew all this stuff. He'd holler at you. Try to bring it in. You know. I'd tell him, shut up, go. Let us fish the way we want. A famous river, and everybody goes to it for stuff like that. The tar pits and the good fish that they get from it. See fish jumping out of the water. It's nice. You and I, if one of these days, and get your dad, we'll go back there up there. Have some fun. Leave the women at home.
So you guys did a lot of camping up there?
Yes. Yeah, we really did. One reason we got started too is in our neighborhood where they were born and grew up in, like the Thedes. They went up there all the time. They had a cottage up there. And there was one other, I don't know if the Walters had a cottage, but they'd go up there every year. So now we'd go up, and in fact they'd find us a little place, and we'd say we're coming up, and we'd be with them for 2 weeks and have a good time. Just nice place.
Campfires and
yes,
making dinner and hanging out and fishing and hunting.
Yeah.
Did Joanne go hunting with you guys at all?
Joanne? Yeah.
She didn't stay at home or anything?
No, she went with us. Always somebody was with her.
when you guys were, but she didn't do any hunting.
No, but she'd go with John all the time. She'd grab your dad's tail, never let it loose. He'd go that way, she'd be with him. And he was good to her, I would say that, because he knew that she couldn't hear a damn thing. She always amazed me how well she did in school when she couldn't hear. She could read your lips good, though.
Still can.
Yeah, she can. You watch her, she watches your lips, and she knows what you're saying.
I remember at Joe's cabin when Joe and Jim threw her in the lake.
Remember that?
And fried her hearing aid. She was not a happy camper.
No, you remember that. Yeah. It was good times, Matt. And I hope you have the same.
After Lawrence Tech, where'd you go to work?
First job I got out of the work that I had before, my brother, who was the vice president of Chrysler at the time, the Hemi engine was his. I said, Vic, what am I going to do? He said, I'll get you a job at Ford's. And in the meantime, I studied, engine design. I wanted to do what my brother did. I wanted to copy with him. And my brother said, well, I got you a job. I said, Vic, jobs are hard to get. He said, I'll get you a job. I got you a job at Ford Motor Car Company. I said, doing what? He says, plant engineering. I said, Vic, I don't know nothing about plant engineering. What the hell? He said, well, a BTU is a BTU. You don't care if it's a car or what. And of course he was an engineer. And I said, okay, I'll try it. I went over there, and I bet you I wasn't in there 2 weeks, and I quit.
Why'd you quit?
Because I wasn't doing anything. You know what I mean? I wasn't using my knowledge or nothing, and I don't know what they were trying to do. So I told Vic, I said, Vic, I'm quitting. I said, I'm going to go find a job someplace where I can do what I was trying to do. He says, you're going back there. I'll find out what's wrong. And he called me the next morning. He says, you get over there, and you'll have no more troubles. I'll tell you that right now. And I can understand it. Here comes a kid. These guys have been there for ages working, and here comes some young punk, just out of college, and all of a sudden he's put up ahead of all these steam pipes through the whole plant, and they didn't think that was right, so they weren't going to help me. So I got into the thing, and I said to Vic, you think it's going to work? He said, it's up to you to make it work, not me. I got you the job. Now you go there and make friends with those guys, because you need them and they need you. So I did, and it worked out good. And thank God I had that advice.
You worked at the Atomic Energy for a little bit, right?
Yes. That was right after I left Ford's. I went to Giffords, because the guy that I was working with at Ford said, John, you do a hell of a lot better over here. And I went to Giffords and worked on Atomic Energy. But even there I got in trouble.
Tell me that story.
I started working, and this guy didn't like a young punk coming up. He was a lot older than me. But he was kind of the job captain. And so he said, here, the gatehouse has to have some heat. So put some heat and stuff in it. Okay, so I signed a gatehouse and took all the, what the temperature is outside. And he looks at it, he said, oh yeah, well that's no good. What'd you do that for? I said, what do you mean, what did I do that for? He said, what do you put steam in there for? I said, you didn't tell me not to put steam in there. He said, no, closest steam line is 3 miles away. Why didn't you put electricity? I said, God damn it, you were my job captain. You should have told me that right from the beginning. You knew it. You waited for it just to get me fired. I says, screw you, and I walked out. And I got a call from my brother Vic. He said, you better get back to her. And I went back, and they raised hell about it. And that's right, the guy was just being mean. He should have told me right off the bat. Closest steam line is 3 miles away, so you can't use steam. You got to use electricity. That's what this place is here down in Tennessee. And so that's how that happened. And that's what you'll run into. I don't know if you've run into it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
They get so jealous of you. And I worked.
When did you start your business relative to when Dad was born?
I started my business, well, first of all, I was all ready to go to the University of West Virginia to play football.
Mm-hmm. This was after the service?
Yeah, as soon as I got out. Then this guy, Don Riddler, took over Lawrence Tech and was starting to make it a professional school with basketball and football, came and got me. In fact, the day before I had my suitcase packed, everything to go to Virginia to play football, because I played football for the Marine Corps. That this guy, Don Riddler, came in and he said, John, I'd like you to go to school here at Lawrence Tech. I said, I never heard of Lawrence Tech. He says, yeah, it's a little school, but we're going to start to grow. It's a good engineering school, and your brother says that you'd like to be an engineer, something like him. And well, yeah, absolutely. So I went there, and I'm glad I did.
How did he know Vic?
Some people, they talk. And Vic at that time was a plant manager.
Yeah.
And so that's how they got to know each other. They talked. And, so I started playing football and met a lot of good people. And then as the time went by, I graduated from the engineering school. I had to go to work someplace. And my brother sent me to the Ford Motor Car Company. I said, Vic, why you send me there? You're working for Chrysler. He says, the guy that was my plant engineer who ran the power plants left to go to Ford because he got more money. I called him up and I told him that I wanted you to go there. I said, what the hell do I know about steam? He says, a BTU's a BTU, brother. You better learn that quick. I said, okay. So that's how I got to working at Ford's. And at that time, Matt, jobs were very hard to get. So I was lucky, and I had just gotten married, and I was making like $200 a month salary. And it went up to $400 as I started doing more work at Ford and getting more jobs. And then this guy, Tommy Badminton, that I knew from high school, went to work at Ford's, and then he transferred over to Giffords, which was an engineering office, is still there. Giffords of L.A. And he got the job with him, and then his wife got real sick, and they told her that they had to move out of the state because of her condition. So he moved to Arizona, and he told me about this job, and he said, John, take it. I said, well, I just came here. I didn't want to jump jobs. He said, it's a hell of a good job. It's better than what you got. And you make more money. So I did. I went over there, got on there. So the next thing I knew, I was out in the world selling to people instead of staying in an office, going to offices like General Motors, Ford, and so forth. And so I started liking it real well. And we started doing real well at the place. Then all of a sudden, what happened is McNamara, who was getting kind of old, decided that he was going to break up the office. So I figured, uh-oh. So I asked a guy from Animastat, which is people that make registered grills, I said, do I have a chance of getting a job? And he said, are you interested in it? I said, absolutely. And he says, you got a job. I said, well, don't say anything to nobody, because I said, I want somebody know him, they'll have to let me go right now. So it worked out that everything worked out smoothly. I took over this McNamara's account. I had to have a partner because it couldn't be. I was doing all the work at home alone. Grandma will tell you that. Worked day and nights. And I finally worked with George Kann. I don't know if you knew him. And he and I worked together at Smith Hinchman on the atomic energy program. And we took over, bless you, we took over the account because McNamara retired. And they grew from there, just kept growing. And we were so damn good that we get any account we wanted. And
so you guys were contractors, or were you guys? I mean, what was your role as far as taking over McNamara's accounts?
We were salesmen.
You were salesmen.
Strictly
Okay.
sales then. In other words, we're engineering sales. We'll come to your office. You wanted to know how to treat this room because you're going to run some engines in it and so forth. And we would sit and tell you to do this, do that, put this kind of diffuser in.
And you're talking about heating, ventilation, air conditioning.
Yeah. Everything do mechanical. We would handle. And these guys liked it. And we did a hell of a job.
And you were working for somebody else's company?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
we represented them. That's
okay.
other part. And we got bigger and bigger. Our staff, we went. Next thing you know, they'd say, "Hey, the guy in Toledo is no good. Will you take over Toledo?" So we took over Toledo. They had nobody good at Grand Rapids, which is the other part of the state, which should have their own representation. They gave us that. So that's how we grew. We hired the people to do it, and they didn't do it. I let them go fast.
Okay, so you and George Kann were really good partners. At what point did you start Fontanesi and Kann?
Fontanesi and Kann was started about a year after I went to work for McNamara. And the only reason is, I used to call on George, and while he still was in engineering, and he did me, good by putting my stuff in, specifying it. So I figured, well, I'll give him a shot because he wasn't happy anymore. And I said, George, I'm going to need a partner. Will you come in? And he did. No ifs, ands, or buts. It worked out pretty good. I made him handle the upper part of the Michigan, down the lower part of Ohio. And I took care of the rest of the stuff. They had to have somebody to take somebody out to drink. He'd take them to drink. He could drink.
What was George like? He was tall, right?
Oh yes, 6'8".
It's pretty tall.
Yeah.
What was his personality like?
Very dry. He was a pretty nice guy, but he didn't have patience for people.
He didn't suffer fools lightly.
No. He just I'd have to, corner him and say, George, you got to do this. Well, good example. There's nothing that he liked better in life than golf. Believe me. You put Marilyn Monroe here, golf course. He would not be at Marilyn Monroe's. He'd be playing golf. And he'd screw a duck if he had a chance. It's him. And he would, I set him up at AC Sparkplug. The guy was real good to us, General Motors. And he wanted to have a schooling on controls, how to set controls and so forth. So I said, okay, I'll have George up there. And I said, what time do you want me? He said, we're going to start about 10 o'clock. 2 o'clock I get a call from Mr. Smith, and he says, where the hell's George? I said, he's supposed to have been there. You mean he's not there? He said, what the hell do you think I'm calling you for? I said, well, let me find out. And we didn't have cell phones and crap. So I finally got in the car and I flew up there. I figured I knew where he was at. He was on a golf course. I caught him. I said, you son of a bitch, we're through as partners. You You and me are dead. That's it. You know, got an account like this, and you blow it. He said, "Oh, I apologize. Let me go see him, and I'll take care of him." And he went up and saw him, took the guy out on the golf course.
So he could finish his round.
Yeah, and that's how we got going. He'd rather be there, Matt, than anything in the world.
Did he get you into golf?
Yes. Yeah, I didn't care about golf much. Golf was his life. It was funny, but yeah, he got me going in it. We were in the same. We were at a small office when it was just George and I. We were down on 6 Mile Road near University of Detroit. And now we started adding people on, like Danny and a few other, Jim Arzoff, but we had to have some place, so we moved out to Oak Park near where we lived. And it was on a corner. We got the corner building. Inatone was over here on the end. And we had, at that time we had, let's see, Jim, Danny, Scoop, George and I, Snyder. We had about 8 guys and 4 girls working in the office. They were pretty good. The head girl was a real good girl. She worked for somebody in the newspaper business, and they got tangled up a little bit, and they just let her go. But she was, what a whiz. If they called me, if the FBI, we were doing a lot of the
White House?
The White House, plus what are you talking about? Where they were making the bomb.
Atomic Energy? Manhattan Project?
Manhattan. We were doing a lot of that work there. And they had that covered pretty good, so that nobody would squeal. And so we got on the job, and we started telling people what we were doing, and they grabbed us. And the FBI guys, they walked into our office. They said, "Can we speak to John and George?" And Miss Peg Darcy said...
Peg was your girl in the office.
She said, "Do you have an appointment?" And they said, "No." They opened up her coat, showed the badge, FBI, and she says, "Well, that don't impress me." She was good. She was good.
Where were you guys at the time?
I was in my office. George was out of the office. I had my door closed. I could hear everything. And Peg just wouldn't let him in. She says, "You make an appointment. You're no different than anybody." "Oh, this is government. This is court orders. They have to be in court to talk about this." And so she wrote everything down. She says, "You can come back tomorrow." She says, "I'll tell John when he comes in." She didn't tell John anything. I heard it all. I never opened my door. I left it that way. She was good.
Because you weren't sure what was going on?
No, I didn't know. Then and that's when we found out that there was a little kickback and stuff, and we didn't even know about it. Because I wouldn't allow that junk to happen. And the guy that was calling on Bram and those guys before that, that's the way he did his business. So it ended up good. In fact, we went to the court, and the judge says to me, "Young man, I want to tell you I admire you and your company for what you did. I knew you were in that back room, and so did they, but they didn't push it." And I thought, if I'd have known that, I'd have opened that door fast. But we got through it.
Now, it was your accountant.
Yes.
Tom Payne?
No, Tom Payne was our attorney.
Your attorney.
Schrady was our accountant.
And he gave you some good advice.
Oh, yes. He told us, if you can, you buy the equipment and sell it. Otherwise, the factory knows what you're making. So if you have this item and it only costs you $1 and you sell it for $100, you know, they're going to say, "Whoa, wait a minute. instead of giving you your commission, we want more than that because you guys are making a fortune. So that's how he did it. He'd help us real good. He says, you got to keep everything above board. And that's so important, Matt. So important to have a good accountant. More than a good lawyer.
And did the business grow pretty quickly?
No. I again was fortunate to run into a guy named Kann, Mr. Kann. And he, at that time, probably one of the biggest sheet metal companies in the United States. He was in with all the politicians from Washington, D.C. The guy who's the owner of the Yankees.
Steinbrenner.
Steinbrenner is his buddy, fishing buddy and stuff. He had a cottage up north. And Grandma and I used to use it with our kids. And he'd take guys in there, like, you know, Steinbrenner and those guys. And I was working for General Motors, Argonaut. And he liked what I did, some of this work. He said, how about coming to work for me? I said, I'm happy here. He said, well, I need somebody because I need an engineer. Because we're a contractor, you know, we can hire anybody we want, but I want somebody full-time. I'll make you that promise. I'll give you more than what you're making now. I said, I know what you're making, because he knew my boss real good. So he's from General Motors. He knew everything. And then from then on in, that's what made Fontanesi and Kann more than anything. That's all I knew was a Cooney. I said the name of the company was Cooney.
And Cromlin was his real name?
Yes.
And he was a mentor to you?
Yes, very much so.
Well, in what capacity? Was he a businessman?
Oh yeah, he owned a lot of companies. His head company was Carlson Brothers. He used to be like I was, you know, running a company, and he grew from there. They did the White House. He knew Brenner and those guys.
Steinbrenner.
Steinbrenner,
yeah.
Those guys would sit on a curb at
the bar?
No, I'll tell you a story about that. You just reminded me of something. They'd sit at the curb and they'd flip a coin. You do the White House, I'll do the garden. They did. I just watched them. Geez, this kind of money, you know. They didn't care. Then they'd sit there with $100 bills and they'd say, odd or even. The last number.
On the serial?
Yeah.
Serial number?
Yeah. You know, I'm like this watching those guys. Ooh. They had a lot of money. He ran around with them a lot.
So he was a businessman, but he did engineering?
No. He'd hire engineers.
To do what form of engineering or what form of construction?
And like mechanical, always mechanical.
Okay.
These other guys. Now, he had a real young kid named Paul Thompson, who ran the company later. Didn't have any kind of background, and he hired him because of a mechanical contractor that did a lot of work for him. The guy was at our church too, back in Detroit, and this guy came to Cooney and said, "I got this young kid and he needs a job. Can you use him?" He said, "Sure." So he took him aboard, and then he got me. He said, I want you to teach this guy everything about balancing systems. Sit down with him, do this, do that, and do that. In the meantime, he got the order for the White House. They sat on the corner, I'm not kidding you. They flipped a coin and said, okay, you do all the mechanical, you do the electrical, you do this. So he got all the mechanical work. So next thing I know, he says, you got to draw this stuff up. I said, I can do that. I got guys that will draw for me, but I need some tables, you know, drafty table. You could ask Grandma. Next thing I know, bang, bang, 6 tables in my garage. So my brother-in-law, who never knew how to draw, Angie's husband, he had a table. His Art Rossi, he did some work. His Elmer Thede worked for me, so he had some knowledge. And all they really had to do was draw the outline of the building, copy.
This was of the addition to the White House.
Yeah, and what we had to do. Now, I had to go every now and then, with see this Paul Thompson and help him, and Cootie wanted me to, I had to meet every Saturday at his office. And he said to me, he said, this one guy's giving me a lot of trouble. I'm sitting in the background while Paul is talking to the boss. And he said, what kind of trouble is he giving you? He said, well, I think you got more than 200 CFM out of there. And
This is an Army Corps of Engineer guy who's supervising the construction?
Yes, yeah. And he was a colonel, too. And he said, Cootie told him, he said, don't argue with him. He says, listen to what John says. If it's 200 CFM on the drawing, never say 200. Say 190 or 210 or he says, never be exact, because you guys can't measure that good. You got to have a lot more stuff than you have what you're getting in a field. So, but stay close. Well, Paul went in there, and this guy wouldn't accept any of this stuff. He was giving him a lot of trouble. So he called back to Detroit, where the office was. Paul did. And he said, Cootie, this guy's giving me a bunch of crap. What the hell am I going to do? He says, I'll tell you what you're going to do. You be friends with him. Take him out to lunch. Go to this place, and I'll have the tables all set up for you from Detroit. He's calling Washington. And they'll feed you. And just make sure everything goes good. So Paul got the guy at the table. Come in there. I didn't find out about this till later, Matt. And Paul started giving him a few drinks. Cootie called the Army Corps Engineer head office. They knew him. He said, what the hell are you doing? You got this goddamn colonel over here. He's drinking beer on my time?
Cootie set him up.
The guy got fired. Took him about. I said, Cootie, you can't do that. He's got a family. He said, I got another job. He's not going to be on my job. That's all. I don't care. Your grandma, he was something else. See, one of the things we used to do all the time, Mr. Hutchinson would never let me buy a Christmas tree early. We always had to buy it late, because they throw them away. So when you buy them early, you're paying $5, $6 a tree. And we didn't have that kind of money. He had a ton of kids. And so what we always did is waited
to Christmas Eve
and went over and got a tree for 50 cents. Okay, so when we came home, Hutch came back at my house. He says, give me your big ladder. I said, what do you want? He said, we got to go put snow tracks on the roof. I said, Hutch, you're so goddamn drunk. I'm not climbing up on that roof. He said, you just get the ladder and get the sled up there, and I'll do all the rest of the work. Well, right next door to him, Hutch, on that side of the street where he lived, which was the east side of the street, was Fraternity, which was a Jewish family. And their kids were nice. On my side, the Wasserman family is next to me. So we had to make tracks on all those roofs so that they couldn't come up and tell Tommy and John that there's no Santa Claus. Somebody else did that stuff. And nobody knew we did it. Not nobody until we told them later in life that we're the ones that did it. Crazy Hutch. Oh, God. We had a good neighborhood. All kids should grow up in that kind of a neighborhood.
The Hutchisons had a lot of kids, right?
Hmm?
The Hutchisons had a lot of kids?
Oh, yeah. And the only reason he was born out here in California. And he came, and his folks were actually, they lived in Canada, right across the river, Detroit River from us, and then he started going to a Catholic school up in St. Mary's. Then he came to work, he got laid off, and he came to work for me. I gave him a job. Fontanesi in Kann was fairly new. He was a good salesman. And all of a sudden one day he came in and he said, "Hey Boston, I'm leaving." I said, "What do you mean you're leaving?" He said, "I'm going to California. Will you drive me to the train station tomorrow?" I said, "Hutch, you're crazy. What the hell are you doing?" He said, "With all the kids I got," and I forgot it. There was 12, I think he had. He said, "I can't afford your education. But in California, if your parents and you were born there, they go free." And I didn't know that. It's the only reason he did. So I took him to the train station next day, put him on a train. Next thing I know, he came back and he says, "I'm all set. I got a place for them to live in," and so forth. Well, Marianne and Grandma and I, we took off. First time we got a chance to go to see them. We wanted to see how they were doing. They were doing all right.
I heard you one time lit yourself on fire.
I sure did. And it was fall where all the leaves are on, and you burn the leaves. Well, I figured I'm not going to wait that long for it, so I put some gasoline on top of it. And while I poured the gasoline, I poured some, hit my pants. So when I lit, everything went up in flame. My leg went up, and I burned it.
Did you do this in front of the kids?
Your dad was there, and I think Jimmy or Joanne, one of them was there.
Two of them or something were there.
Was this in Oak Park?
No, that was in Birmingham. Oak Park didn't have enough room for anything to burn. Because of my connections in the industry, I bet you I had 6 guys working for me, making drawings. They didn't know what they were doing. All I told them was draw that straight line this way, that way, outline of a building. I take care of everything else. And we did the White House, we did the Trade Center, did all those babies, and they drew it after I showed them what they had to draw. So you can get by.
It was just keeping your friends in work?
They were all out of work.
Helping out your neighbors?
Yeah. I hired a couple of them permanently, but then they, like Scoop, decided to come back out there where he was born.
And that was the late 50s?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a good group, good people that we grew up with. And I'm glad my kids, they were, well, a good example of that is we were a Catholic church. Our church burned down. And so who gives us a place to go? The Jewish synagogue. They say, hold a mass at our church. And that's the nice people. That's the way it should be. And I'm happy they grew up there. I really am.
Were you guys pretty active in the church community?
Yes. Yeah. It was a nice young group of people. I enjoyed all of them. That's where we met the Hutches, and everybody right down the line. It was good.
And was the church close to where you guys lived, or did you have to drive to it?
No, we walked to it. It was real nice.
And how far was it from the Birmingham home to Brother Rice?
Birmingham, all they had to do is jump the fence like that, like they used to, and they were into Brother Rice's property.
So it's one block away.
Yeah, that's how right across the street from us were the Wenties. They used to go across the Wenties and jump the fence, and they were in school. They finally stopped them from doing it, but those guys had it made. And
so the boys went to Brother Rice, and what was the girls' school?
Marion.
Sister Marion?
Marion High, yeah.
And was that all? Were those schools all grades, or was it just high school?
High school. The grade school, like what they had, Matt, is St. Regis, which was the beginning. And then you had Brother Rice next to it, and then you had Marion next to that. So it fulfilled everything they had to do. It was a nice setup for them. Beautiful. And they had a lot of a lot of power there. You had the Lee Iacocca's, and you had the guy that owned the Detroit News, and down the line, it was a lot of good money.
So there's a lot of well-to-do business people.
Very much so.
In Michigan lived in that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people from Ford in that neighborhood.
Okay, so we were just looking at that map of Oscoda over on the east end of Michigan. You guys used to take summer vacations over there?
Every year.
And why Oscoda?
Just, it's such a nice place to be. You have everything. You have wild deer, a wild bear, come into the work, you run into the cabin real fast. But everything was so primitive and yet modern. It was really nice. Like Cooney's place, it was, I'm trying to think of the steel company that owned it, and Cooney bought it from them. They had a river runs through it, and then they had a dam, and then they had a bridge that you could walk over. And your dad worked at this place in the summer, keeping it in shape. It's such a beautiful place. And then Cooney had a cabin for him and his men that he'd invite up. And his wife had the house. And he didn't want the wives to stay over there. They stayed there. They played cards for money. They were something else, but they were great people.
So you used to take the kids there every summer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember almost getting arrested for seeing the secret B-52s and the atomic missiles?
Yes, that is true. The Oscoda had the SAC base on there. You know, they had all the big bombers and stuff, and you weren't supposed to get within a certain distance. But we figured out we're good, so we just drove almost right into the gate, and they came. They got us to get out.
Come yell at you.
Yeah.
I've heard that you like to have a few adult soda pops.
Yes, and this was one of those days that we went out and had some adult soda pop after a handball game.
Yeah. You'd already had kids at this point, right?
Yeah.
All right.
And so we had those soda pops, and I shouldn't have drove home. And I don't know.
This is after dinner. This is after mid-afternoon.
Late. And I don't know how, Matt, I turned that car around like that, sideways.
What happened?
I don't know.
No, but what was the result?
Well, finally, what we had to do is go get a Jackson.
No. What ended up being the problem?
The problem was me.
So all right. So you had a few adult soda pops, and you drove home, and then you managed to park the car sideways in the garage.
Right. Now try that sometime. Without hitting anything.
So you wake up in the morning and you find the car sideways in the garage. Mm-hmm. And what'd you end up doing?
I started blaming everybody else but me. I didn't do it. Mary Ann did it.
And
no. Yeah, we finally got a jack, and turned it around and got it out. It's the only way we could get it. There was no way that I put that car in there. I'm telling you that right now, but I did.
Wasn't the boys playing a prank on you?
No, they weren't. They weren't. If they were, they never told me till now. Beautiful music. We lived in that era where the Don, like my father, they ruled the roost. And we got married, and we were living in an apartment. A buddy of mine's family ran it. And the Don says, "Oh, my brother Vic just got me a job at Ford Motor Car Company, in plant engineering." And my father says, "You go over there and move in where your sister's at." I said, "Pa, all I make is $200 a month. And I got to pay for my own gas and everything. I can't never afford that. He said, I didn't ask you that. You just go there and move in. And he gave us the money to...
He loaned us $4,000
to buy it. Never had payment. To Don speaks, you move. Good family. Still good. With the kids,